20 questions coming from an inexperienced entrepreneur to an experienced entrepreneur.
Let's do this.
All right. Some of these are a little bit more like surface level. Some of them are a little bit deeper. Okay. So first one, what should you do when you receive your first large payment?
You should pretend like you're never going to get another one, and you should stock it away and be as frugal as you possibly can. And make sure you have enough money to reinvest back into the business. Pay yourself a modest amount. And by modest, I mean the least amount possible. Mm-hmm. And don't turn around and spend it, because it could be a long time before you see another one.
So on your journey, was there a moment where it was like one day you got the big paycheck, or was it like a slow rise?
It depends on the kind of business and the business model, I think, is a big part of it. If you're building a business that's like recurring revenue, mm-hmm. it's probably going to be slow.
Yeah.
If you're doing service-based work, you might be building up a portfolio of customers, so that can be maybe medium. But if you're doing like big deal type stuff, brokerage, M&A, acquisition, consulting, it might take you 8, 10, 2 years to close the deal, mm-hmm. but you'll get a check for, 3 years worth of income, right?
So I guess what I'm trying to get is like, what did that look like for you?
It depends, because I had like a rolling start, right? So okay. I started when I graduated from college. I had a degree in physiology, mm-hmm. decided to become a commodities broker. So I had a steep learning curve. Yeah. I had some help from the guys around me, and they helped me get started and gave me a couple small customers. But then I got into the world of marketing. And so, I got to be on commission and sell. And so I think, my first year out of school, I made maybe 70,000 or something like that.
That's not bad.
Not bad, because I was in commission though. I was in sales, right? So most were risk reward.
Okay, cool.
As I evolved and I got into doing more like deal structuring and deal making, those deals might take 8, 10, 12 months, but then you get a check for 100, 200, 300,000. So you kind of have some of those deals going on while you have other businesses going on, and the money's kind of coming from everywhere. Is how it works.
Mm-hmm. I like what you said about pretend like you're never going to get it again.
Yeah. It's just like, okay, this money does not exist.
I did not see that at all. Okay, cool.
It's so hard though. It's like burning a hole in your pocket.
So this kind of, that question kind of segues into the next one, which you already touched on. As an entrepreneur, how do you decide what to pay yourself?
Ultimately, you're typically paying yourself last. So you're paying the business, you're paying your employees and your contractors, and then you're taking the scraps left over at the bare minimum that you possibly can. Or you're carrying a lot of function in the business, and so you're paying yourself a fair wage, but you're trying to keep as much going back into the business as fuel and gas so that you can leverage it, right, in order to go make more money. So
it seemingly seems to be very dependent on the business you're in, and then maybe your risk tolerance, because if you're taking more money out of the business, then it's less risk to you, but more risk to the business.
Yeah. And when you become an entrepreneur, you get paid in other ways, right? So you get write-offs from your expenses. You can write off things like cars and fuel and miles and things that you didn't get before. So you may not be getting as much physical money, but you're net probably paying less in taxes. So it kind of works out in the wash.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand that, you can't look that far ahead, it might slow you down.
Okay.
It also just depends on your life circumstance. Mm-hmm. I'm not cheap to keep alive.
Yeah.
So, I need at least $100,000. Thankfully, I have other sources of income, so I'm not dependent on one thing when I start a business, so I can pour back as much as I possibly can.
Yeah.
But there's no secret sauce. The answer is pay yourself as much as you can possibly stand, sometimes, or delay it as long as you can, so that you can just focus on growing the business.
Yeah. Okay. How can you gauge if a business is worth sacrificing your time or money? And when can you tell if it stops being worth that?
Business to me is a lot like art.
Okay.
And so it's creative in its nature. Mm-hmm. When you first start out, there's a little bit of ignorance. Like you just have no idea. You don't understand business models, profitability. So I think the first thing are you passionate about it? Is this something that you want to do? But the second step before you kind of take the leap is really understand how the business makes money. A lot of people have these great ideas like it would be cool to own a whiskey bar or a restaurant. until you realize that you're working nights and weekends and making
Not much.
10% margin. And you're like, this isn't that sexy anymore. And so you got to make sure that it's an industry you want to be in. You're passionate. You have a vision. So I can't tell you much more than that, but it's kind of like picking a college career, a college degree. Like, oh, it would be great to do X, Y, and Z, but nobody ever stops to say, how much money do they make? And does it support the lifestyle design that I want to have?
Yeah.
So there's got to be an alignment between your lifestyle and the business itself. And it's also got to make money, you know?
Yeah. Maybe like a question to ask yourself is, if this went as far as it can go, what would it feel like to be that owner?
Yeah. People don't look that far ahead. A lot of people will start businesses on a cool idea and say, oh, I don't like to make a 10-year plan.
Yeah.
But if you don't know where you're going, you might not like where you end up.
Yeah.
So,
or if you don't know where you're going, someone else is probably choosing where you're going.
correct.
Truth.
It's like flying a plane 1 degree off can put you in a totally
Yeah.
different country, right?
True that. Man, you said something else when you're answering that made me want to ask you another question that I didn't write down, but now I'm forgetting what it
Passion,
was.
creation.
Yes, that's what it was.
Yep.
So you mentioned passion, but I feel like as a naive entrepreneur, I feel torn between wanting to prioritize something that I'm passionate about and something that is, I don't know, practical. So like, how much emphasis should you have on your passion towards just like putting in the work? You know, because you're not going to always feel passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah. I think people confuse that statement, right? So being passionate about building a great product, providing a great service, building a great team and a great culture, something that gives you life. It's your own thing that you created. Nobody's telling you what to do. That's different than, I love music, so I'm going to go be a musician, or I'm going to go work in the music industry, right?
Yeah.
So don't confuse things that you really enjoy doing that are like stress relieving or artistic with something that you should pursue as a career.
So yeah, maybe don't associate passion with enthusiasm, but more passion with your principles and core values.
Yeah, like you have to genuinely love the game of business to be an entrepreneur. It's all just a giant game, and money's just the points on the scoreboard. And the more of that you can get, the more you can leverage that to create more money or build more jobs or have more fun, do more cool things, make more impact. Just because you love music, I use that example a lot because I think starving artist is like one of the primary things that people think of. Like, just because you love music doesn't mean you need to go be a professional musician.
Yeah. Honestly, for a lot of people, it means you probably shouldn't be a professional musician. But
yeah, and there's a difference between being a solopreneur and having a business, because a business is something that can operate without you.
Yeah.
So if you are the business, you are not an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You're an artist.
Yeah.
But you're
Just
not
have
an
a glorified
entrepreneur.
job.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's move on. Do you have any sales horror stories?
Sales horror stories.
Yeah. Any sales that someone's tried to sell you that's gone horribly wrong, or you've tried to sell someone else that's gone horribly wrong?
No, I would just say naive sales person, which is banking on the deal before the money shows up in the bank.
Nice.
I can't tell you, I've coached salespeople, I've been a salesperson, and people will say, that was a great call. And then you'll say, what was great about it? And like, oh, we just had a great connection. And when you start to ask them details about the person, the problem, the solution, you quickly realize that they don't know much about it. And so often we start counting our chickens before they hatch.
I've made that mistake before.
Everybody has, right? And the same thing is in entrepreneurship too. So going back to kind of your original question, which is when you get the big check, pretend like you're never going to get it again. Frugal.
Man, I remember about a year ago when I first started like doing that entrepreneurial thing on my own, I planned on like $1,000 check being in my bank account on a certain day. But then it was not. And I was in Denver, like just refreshing my bank account app over and over. Just being like, man, it was horrible. That's funny. Well, it makes me feel less alone. Doesn't make me feel less stupid, but less alone. So
I mean, it's one of those things like knowledge plus experience equals confidence and competence. You kind of have to go through it. What we're talking about today are just in the absence of experience, what are the attitudes, the skills, and the habits that you need to have as an entrepreneur to be successful? Because you can have a lot of knowledge, like book knowledge.
Yeah.
But it's a lot different than street smarts.
Definitely. Yeah, especially in today's online landscape with all that.
Yeah, everybody's like 0 to 1 million, right?
Yeah.
Did it overnight.
I heard this term the other day, which is a little crass, but I like it. But a lot of content in the business world, entrepreneurial stuff is mental masturbation.
100%.
So, okay, let's move on. So that was your sales horror story. Do you have any like sales stories where you just killed it or just went like really well, like big wins?
It's probably my first big brokerage customer when I was a commodities broker back in 2008, 2011. The first time I got somebody to send me like $500,000 was mind blowing to me. First, I was like, where do people get that much money?
Yeah, seriously.
Followed by, wow, okay, if I can sell 500, like, why can't I sell 1 million?
Yeah. Right? So when that happened, was that in person or over the phone?
That was all over the phone.
Over the phone? Yeah. So after that phone call ended, or maybe after you saw the money in your bank account, what do those next like 15 minutes look like? Were you like, did you hang up the phone and go like,
it was like that scene. There's an old scene with Emmett Smith. It's like a Gillette razor commercial.
Okay.
And after the Super Bowl that they won, Emmett Smith is like sitting there for a second. And then he's like breaks over and then he leans back on the bench and he starts lifting weights. That's kind of like what it's like. Cause up until that point, I was horrible. I was a terrible salesperson.
Okay.
Because I didn't understand how to ask good questions, get to the root of the problem, understand what the customer really needed, show them how we can solve that problem. When you're a broker, you're helping people trade basically. Yeah. You're trying to give them wisdom, advice, and you work for them. And so I didn't get that. So I had plenty of those, oh man, this deal's coming in, and never showed up.
Dang it. That's cool. Man, I hope to have a moment like that.
Yeah, you will. You will.
I'm going to go blow it all. I'm not going to listen to any of this advice. No, I'm just kidding. This is mostly around selling.
Okay.
But in general, how do you personally manage the fear of rejection? Or since you've been in the game for a minute, is it still even there?
Man, I think at some level, we don't want to be rejected. The problem is when you start counting the dollars. So there's a phrase in selling that says, don't sell out of your own pocket, which means just because it seems like a lot of money to you doesn't mean it's a lot of money. And a lot of that stems from people don't understand that money is simply a tool. It's an exchange of value, an exchange of energy, and people will use their money in order to get leverage on their time, right? So why do you call a roofer to re-roof your house when you could just do it yourself? Because they know how to do it. They have the tools, the resources, the connections, the team, right? Exactly. And they can do it in a shorter period of time, more efficiently.
Yeah, better than you.
But you pay a premium for that. But you're leveraging the money as a tool to get what you want, which is a new roof in a shorter period of time. So when you get your head wrapped around it like that, and that the whole sale is really just an exchange of value, it gets heck of a lot easier. There's a lot less pressure on it. And truthfully, the money is already there. It already exists. You're just trying to get them to assign those dollars to you, right? And the way they assign the dollars to you is you've added enough value. Yeah. They think that you can solve that problem. But the rejection piece is really just your own insecurity. It has nothing to do with the other person. And so there's a saying that says desperation is a salesperson's worst deodorant.
Yeah.
So when you're desperate or you're unconfident, it comes out quickly.
It's stinky.
It's subtle. It's in your body language and people can tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say it's subtle, but you almost immediately know subconsciously.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, we're picking up on tons of body language cues just in this conversation, right? Whether we're registering or not is something different.
Why do you think the average person gets money so wrong?
I think it's the way that we're wired from a very young age. We're taught that money is a resource that's very hard to come by. When truthfully, money is just simply a tool that when leveraged properly allows you to expand time, right? I can leverage money to pay somebody to do work for me. I can pay a commission to a salesperson to get them to go out and hunt down new deals. I can leverage the money to get debt in order to buy a piece of real estate. But we're taught at a very young age that we should save. Money's bad, evil, so on and so forth. And therefore, we just don't have a proper orientation with it. But it's like a tools in a toolbox, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have a bunch of tools and they're in your toolbox, if you have a bunch of tools and they're in your toolbox and you don't use them, then they become useless.
Yeah, it's interesting. I also think maybe a lot of people view money as too one-dimensionally transactional, where it's like you spend it once and it's gone. You can't spend money to make you more money, or,
Yeah,
people think this money gets me this one certain thing, instead of like this money can bring in more money or do.
When you start thinking about money as energy, and you think about how many hours you spend to get the money, like if you're working on hourly wage,
Mm-hmm.
and then you turn around and you spend that on something that doesn't create more money, you've effectively just transferred the energy of the hours that you put into that work to something else that's never going to create more money. So you gave up your leverage to get the thing, which we all do that. But if you do that too often, then you will always be stuck on that cycle of feeling like money is hard to come by. So there's a good book called Richest Man in Babylon. And it talks about each one of your dollars is like a little worker. And if you can put that worker back out into the market and it can go make more money for you, it's great. But if you every time you spend it, it's like killing those workers off, removing them from your workforce, and you can't make more money.
Or even more so, giving them to another company.
Yeah, correct. Somebody's getting, right?
Yeah, someone's getting those dollars.
Exactly.
So. You guys see this Gucci t-shirt? This is 70 hours of my life.
Exactly. That's pretty much though. When you start thinking about it like that, you think differently.
I'm wearing 70 hours on my chest. All right.
I hope that's not Gucci.
It's not. This is Ragstock. Okay. So going off of this question of why most people don't understand money, what do you think the real reason most people never take the entrepreneurial leap or never start a business is?
I think most people crave a certainty and security more than they crave freedom. And so they're willing to give up their freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of relationship and purpose to get certainty and security. And just that fear, that leap, that transition alone will stop a lot of people from pursuing the things that are on their heart. The second thing is probably just fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
Because they don't have enough experience, but it's the chicken or the egg scenario.
Yeah.
How do you get experience? You just got to go do it.
Yeah. It's uncomfortable.
It's very uncomfortable.
Okay. This is a challenge question.
All right.
With the least amount of words possible, how do you start a business?
Business is about trust. And you have to convince the market that they can trust you.
I like that. That makes a lot of sense. And it's kind of poetic.
Thank you. Been told that.
3 books you'd recommend to a beginner entrepreneur to gain a better understanding on business.
I think the first one is Know Yourself. And, the first thing you have to do is know yourself. And so there's a good book by Gino Wickman called The Entrepreneurial Leap. And it talks about the attributes of successful entrepreneurs. So that's the first one. The second book is a book called Built to Sell. And that book's all about how to build a business that's sellable in the future. I think that's very important. Most people haven't thought that far ahead when they take the leap. And the third book is more of a leadership book, but I would say Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Because in order to be an entrepreneur, you have to understand that everything is your fault and nothing isn't. And if you don't take responsibility for it, nobody's coming to save you.
That's actually the next book in my queue right now.
Oh, you're going to like it.
Thanks.
It's a good book.
Awesome.
Do you have it on Audible?
No, I just have a hard copy.
Oh, shoot.
Should I get it on Audible?
So on Audible, it's read by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. Listen to those names, right? They're Navy SEALs. They're the guys that wrote the book.
Yeah.
They literally sound like the baddest dudes. They're like, we were in the middle of Ramadi, Iraq.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like, this is intense.
All right, maybe I have to get the audio back.
It's pretty good on audio. I feel like you would enjoy it.
Okay.
Might be too intense for you, but
I'll keep you guys updated.
I really like this style of,
yeah,
it's like a little mini interview pod.
Yeah.
It could even be turned not just into shorts, but mid-form content.
Yeah, if especially on some of the questions we have where you kind of have a little bit of a longer answer.
Yeah.
You're starting over. What are your first steps? What industries are you looking at?
What industries am I looking at? Oh gosh. If I was starting over today, I probably would just go buy a business.
Okay.
There's a huge wealth transfer coming of baby boomers who are ready to exit the market, and they built great companies over the course of 30 or 40 years. And I would probably go to the trades sector because there's somewhat recession proof. People still need HVAC, electrical, plumbing, asphalt, paving, junk and waste, infrastructure. Those things aren't going anywhere. And the skills gap also applies to most people who don't really know how to do those things anymore, because for the last 20, 30 years, we've convinced everybody that they should go to college and become white collar knowledge workers, which is great. But the blue collar trades are still alive and well.
We're always going to need them.
Exactly.
Well, until Tesla builds the Tesla bot, but okay, cool. So that's good. You'd go to the trade sector.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any extra questions.